conference. But let me thank Zem and congratulate her on yet another successful conference, and thank all of you for, persevering, your patience. Those of you who hung over, it's day's almost over. You'll get through it. I heard about last night or early this morning. God bless you. I'm glad I wasn't here. I want to extend my term. But I am glad you're here in this state, especially those of you from out of the state of California. In the spirit of Zem's very generous, brief introduction, you are in the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. I say that because it needs to be said. We're living in a state where 27% of us are foreign born, in a nation where half the population, or rather half, 13.5%, are foreign born. It's a remarkable place, a majority minority state, a state of refuge. 115,000 refugees have been brought into the state, disproportionate number here in San Diego, just in the last 12 years. This is a universal state. And with respect, you chose the governor of California. I'll say this, it's the most un-Trump state in the United States of America. That's as far as I'll go on the partisan side of things. But it's true. Our ability to live together and advance together, it's challenged every single day, but I think by and large we're doing it as well or better than most. And the more I travel the world, I think in many respects the world looks to us to see that it's possible to live and advance together across so many remarkable differences. And so it's a point of pride, I say that, and it's a foundational point, and it's a point that needs to be reinforced at a time where there's so much nativism, so much xenophobia, so much fear and focus on the other and focus on our differences. I say all that at the same time to make this point. We're also in San Diego, and you can't you need to be reminded that it wasn't that many years ago California was America today. In 1994, 1995, we were America in 2018, 2019. We had former mayor from San Diego running for re-election for governor of California on a 3 strikes and you're out initiative, eliminating affirmative action at the UC regions and promoting something that would honestly make Donald Trump even blush. That was an initiative, Prop 187, here in California, basically denying any services for undocumented residents. In fact, encouraging teachers to call the feds to make sure those kids are kicked out of public schools or public health clinics. And by the way, it was good politics back in the 1990s. That governor won his re-election overwhelmingly. The Republican Party, interestingly, was in ascendancy in 1994, 1995. 3 strikes and you're out, 25 to life. Won overwhelmingly in the UC regions. Just a few months later, early 1995, overwhelmingly got rid of affirmative action. That was California. Fast forward today, it's just an interesting fact, the Republican Party's third-party status now in California. Below declined estates. There's not one statewide official can lay claim to Republican Party status. There is no real momentum or energy. And I say that to make this point, 2 points. One is resiliency, which is an important point, and that's what I really want to talk about. And one, it's a cautionary tale. Cautionary tale from a national frame, a national prism. And I say that as a guy married in a big Republican family. This is not me trying to put a crowbar in the spokes of your wheel and your party. I'm just saying it's a cautionary tale. And it's also a point of emphasis. The future happens here first. California is America's coming attraction in every way, shape, or form. Politically, demographically, from an economic prism, from a technological prism. But it also is from this perspective, climate change. We talk about resiliency from a political frame. You need to talk about resiliency from the climate prism. It's an interesting fact that about 4.5 years ago, I remember being in San Francisco, UCSF, listening to a healthcare conference. It was 2015, and someone came up there talking about their improvements in healthcare, and they said, you know what, the real reason I'm up here is not just to focus on your health. He just slyly on the side made a comment that I remember sticking with me. He said, you know what, I'm really happy about these breakthroughs on health and lifespans because climate change deniers are now going to live longer to be proven and see how wrong they actually were. And it was just an aside comment, but I thought it was an interesting one. What was so remarkable, though, I look back at 2015, they didn't have to live very long to see how wrong they were. Just since 2015, we've had 10, just since 2015, we've had 10 of the most destructive wildfires in California's entire history. You look at the last 24 months, all those headlines, just want to remind you what happened in California last 24 months. We lost 139 lives to 16,600 wildfires. We lost over 32,000 structures in this state. Still trying to calculate the destruction in terms of costs. Just the debris removal costs currently in Paradise, California, a small county in Butte, the debris removal costs are now close to $3 billion just to remove the debris in Butte County. One fire, the Camp Fire, the one that obviously generated more headlines, but nonetheless has been part of this larger trend line that now we're experiencing acutely. If you are in denial, come to California. If you live in this state, few are. It's no longer a political argument. It's not a political debate. We've moved past that. It's not focused as much on who's to blame any longer. It's like, what the hell are we going to do? And we're just a few weeks away from entering yet another fire season. And by the way, if you think it doesn't impact you, consider the fact that Californians, a quarter of our population, live in very high or extreme fire danger areas. 1/4 of the state's population. Some think it's just a rural construct. Trust me, if you live in the Bay Area, Oakland Hills area, every one of those East Bay communities is literally just stone's throw away from becoming the next paradise or pleasure, as the president said, California. You'll have to look that up. I won't get into raking strategies. So I say all that to mark a point of emphasis, and it also is going to mark an announcement we want to make, and I'm going to invite someone out here in just a brief moment. But I want to express this to you in broader terms. We have one bankrupt utility in California, one from the northern part of the state. 40% of customers in the state pay PG&E. It's a bankrupt utility, primarily because the hots are getting hotter, the dries are getting drier, the wets are getting wetter, the acuity of the climate change, and fundamental mismanagement in addition to that. You have two investor-owned utilities, one right here I'll be visiting in an hour, SDGE, that's one bond rating away from junk bond status. And they're one of the best managed utilities in the United States of America, but they can't operate in this climate because of the fire danger. Sempra, that owns one of the largest utilities in California and Los Angeles, also one bond rating away from junk bond status, also going into bankruptcy. If you care about low carbon green growth future where we can actually achieve our low carbon strategies, you need strong, investor-worthy, investor-owned utilities that can invest in that infrastructure and that long-term strategy. Right now, we're just trying to keep the lights on. We're just trying to prepare for the next wildfire season. We're now talking because of the acuity of the stress. PG&E is talking about, this is a headline you're going to be reading a lot about. You may experience it directly. This de-energization. They're going to start turning off the lights anytime the wind gets, above 20, 30 miles an hour or the heat goes up. They just start turning off large swathes of the electric grid because the grid's no longer, it's not smart. We haven't invested in it. It's going to be shut down. Lights are going to be shut down for anywhere from 5 days, 6, 7, 8 days. If you got a family member that needs a medical device and needs that to be plugged in or doesn't have backup battery, that's a real, legitimate crisis in the making. That's PG&E's top priority moving into the new fire season in order not to be sold off in pieces because they are one small fire away from complete insolvency despite their bankruptcy status. Now they're done. Same can be argued for the utilities here in Southern California. This is the new normal. This is the reality in this state. And so in an effort to try to address this, we're trying to be novel in our approaches. We're doing more on fuel management, more on vegetation management, more on fuel breaks, and more evacuation strategies, more work with drones and AI, trying to be sort of creative in terms of technologies. Going to do more in terms of mutual aid and pre-positioning of resources. We're buying new Black Hawk helicopters, outfitting C-130s for suppression strategies. We're working with the federal government the extent we can. By the way, federal government owns 57% of all of the wildlands in California. The state manages less than 5%. They've cut their forest management budget by $2 billion in the last 2 years, as we have significantly increased ours. So when we're being lectured, respectfully, from Washington, D.C. about managing our forests, just consider which forests we are managing, the federal government's forests, with no support. But it's not good enough. And so in an effort to try to be creative, and in the generous spirit of one of the previous speakers who referenced a book I wrote, it's nice to actually reread a book that I wrote years ago. I didn't know I'd become governor, and one of the chapters was about creating prizes. And I had forgotten about it. And someone presented this to me a few weeks ago and said, wouldn't it be nice if we brought the best and the brightest from around the world to focus on new technologies and novel approaches to detect fires in their infancy, to detect them at their spark, and to figure out if there are suppression strategies, extinguishing strategies that can be immediate and deployed. And I said, that's a really nice idea. And then out of nowhere, Peter Diamandis texts me and says, I have an idea for an XPrize. They must have been coordinating. And so I'm really pleased to invite out to the stage Peter Diamandis to talk about what we're going to do about this new normal and how California is going to lead not just the rest of this nation, but lead the world on addressing and answering that question. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Peter Diamandis. Sir.
So, a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with you, governors. The question ultimately is there a new way to invent what we've been doing for the last hundreds of years in terms of putting out fires? And the conversation we've had, and we literally had 2 weeks ago with Zem, saying, it's a great XPrize. I love prizes that are clear, measurable, definitive, like if someone's won it. And the conversation we're announcing here today is that we have funded the development of the prize. The prize isn't funded yet, but we're going to actually work with the world's experts to find out what are the rules. My thinking, and this is before the work's done, is that you should be able to say, in this 500 acres of forest land, there should not be a fire over 10 times the size of a campfire, right? Put a limit. And if something gets spotted by infrared from satellites, from drones, that is bigger than that, put it out immediately, autonomously. And the concept is a fire detection and extinction XPrize. Can we find it and put it out before it grows? How it gets put out, is it drones, is it water cannons? Who knows? Right. And that's our hope and our working with you. You've got plenty of test facilities here. But in success, this becomes technology that enables forest land to be insured that was not insurable. Allows people to change the whole concept of insurance from, instead of paying out after the fire, why don't we use insurance to actually prevent the fire in the first place? Yeah. Right, let's flip that model.
Yeah. And which I like. And by the way, insurance, they're not insuring folks in what they call these wildland urban interfaces any longer. Any of you that may live in these quote unquote WUIs, about 11 million Californians live in that wildland urban interface. You're seeing your deductibilities go up, your premiums go up, or they're simply not renewing you because they cannot absorb these losses anymore. So that point you're making and emphasizing is profoundly important. And again, this is impacting every single one of us in ways that are obvious, but substantively in ways, moreover, that are less obvious. And I just caution you, wait till you see your electric bills in the next few years if we don't get serious about addressing this issue. And from a competitiveness perspective, not just from a residential rate perspective, our ability to recruit and retain the kind of business and the activity that we're known for obviously will be at risk and in peril unless we can address those cost concerns as well. So, Peter, I long admired your leadership in this space, and I imagine a prize like this, again, is hardly, and I think everybody mostly knows this, but you're inviting people to participate in this competition. Prize invites the world.
Around the world. So we have no idea what the solution is going to be. We just need to know if you do this, you've solved it, right? So if it has a clear, measurable goal, we're going to figure out the rules. We're going to run the development. Takes us about 100 days to do a prize development. Over this 100 days, we're going to try and find a sponsor, whether it's a corporation or a family, who wants to put their name on it. And then we'll launch the competition. And we'll know. We'll run this, and we do this over and over again. And it'll be head-to-head between these companies. And if one can detect and extinguish a fire in a repeatable fashion, then it becomes technology that, you know, every farm, every piece of land wants to have coverage on. Let's reinvent what has been an old form of fire suppression, of people putting themselves in danger, and let's save those 136 lives. That's the most important thing.
I mean, we're still trying to get old-time cameras out there in the forest. We still have an analog 911 system in the state of California. We have 234 of these CAL FIRE forest stations. Over half of them are more than 50 years old. They're dilapidated, falling down. People can't even be pre-positioned out there. It is hard to describe how antiquated we are in this response. The first responders do an extraordinary job, and the mutual aid from around the world is second to none. But we shouldn't be celebrating that heroism on the back end. We should be celebrating that heroism and ingenuity on the front end. And again, that's the spirit of the XPrize, and the spirit, I think, that demands our attention, and the spirit that defines this moment. Again, at peril, we walk back into yet another fire season. By the way, that is prospectively even more ominous than previous years for the perverse reason that it was so wet. Now there's more vegetation than ever, and as we go into those dry seasons, that vegetation then becomes obvious kindling, so to speak, or fuel for these extraordinary fires. So, Peter, I just want to thank you again for your willingness to participate with this state. We want to maintain our status on being on the cutting edge, and we appreciate any and all of you to help amplify this prize and encourage folks to participate. And those of you that are sending me notes and videos already with ideas, now you have a place to send them. That's to Peter.
I'll forward the text to you.
You can forward a text to me. Anyway, we appreciate everybody. Thank you so much. We're grateful to Zem and the conference. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. I just want to I love this prize because it is, when a team solves it, it sets up a new normal. I was on the phone with Zem and Governor Newsom a couple weeks ago because we were talking about this prize, and I said, I can't announce a prize we don't have any money for. Maybe I can get the funds to do the prize development for this. And that's what we're announcing today, that we're developing the prize, and then we'll hopefully launch it in the fall if all goes well. And I was like, who am I going to get this from? Well, there's been a man who is a dear friend. He's backed, he's one of the people who backed, along with Elon Musk, our Global Learning XPrize. By the way, we're announcing the winner